America wants change, and Ohio cast 144 votes for the next president. Yes!
In 1992, Bill Clinton was running for president. Under George Bush Sr., America had slid into depression, and Clinton promised that he would use the political power of the presidency to rescue the nation.
It's time to change America. George Bush, if you won't use your power to help America, step aside. I will. There is no them. There is only us.
Clinton promised to use the power of the state to reform America's health care, extend welfare, and invest in jobs. And above all, reduce the inequalities that had risen up under President Reagan. And at the end of 1992, he was triumphantly elected. But in January, a few days before his inauguration, two leading members of the financial world came to see Clinton in Washington. One was Alan Greenspan, the head of the Federal Reserve. The other was Clinton's new economic advisor, Robert Rubin, the head of Goldman Sachs. What they told the president was dramatic. His political plans were impossible. He was inheriting a huge government deficit, and if he borrowed any more money to pay for his promises, interest rates would rise, people would stop borrowing and spending, and there would be an economic disaster.
The single most critical meeting with President Clinton with respect to the economic strategy of the Clinton administration was in early January during the transition, about 2 weeks before the inauguration. And it was at that meeting, what we were saying to the president was that we need a dramatic change in policy, and it has to be accomplished as much as possible by cutting spending, even though that is very difficult politically.
It was a dramatic message, though, for a Democratic president, wasn't it?
I think any president would have found it a dramatic message, whether Democrat or Republican, to have to start his administration by both reducing programs and cutting spending. And that's very difficult for any politician.
But what both Rubin and Greenspan told Clinton was that there was an alternative way to build a better society. He should let the market do it. Instead of seeing the markets as a dangerous force that politics had to control, he should give away power and let them flourish unrestricted. The markets, they said, were now so intertwined with people's lives that they could respond democratically to people's needs in all aspects of their lives in a way that politics couldn't.
Alan Greenspan communicated a very clear message to Bill Clinton that the economy and people's appetites as expressed in the economy, their buying, their ability to buy, what they prefer, is a better gauge of public sentiment than any other. The economy, to that extent, is superior to democracy. In a democracy, it's less tidy. People can express their preferences only indirectly through their representatives, and their representatives have to express the preferences of a lot of people and sometimes want to express their own preferences rather than their constituents. So in that way of viewing the world, an economy is preferable to a democracy.
Faced with the bankers' argument, Clinton agreed, and on taking office began to cut back on his reforms. During his first term, he dismantled much of the welfare structure that had been put in place in the 1930s. He abandoned all his healthcare reforms and cut government regulation of business. It was what the markets wanted. As Greenspan had promised, the economy began to boom. And in 1996, Clinton made a speech that announced the end of the vision of liberal politics, that one could use the power of big government to change the world.
We know big government does not have all the answers, and we have worked to give the American people a smaller, less bureaucratic government in Washington. And we have to give the American people one that lives within its means. The era of big government is over.
It was the triumph of market democracy, a belief that anyone who gave the public what they wanted was democratic and thus good, as opposed to the old political elites who believed that they knew what was best for us and imposed their idea of what society should be. In the process, businessmen became transformed. They might be greedy and selfish, but they were also engineers of a new kind of freedom. By responding to the needs and desires of individuals, they were interpreting the will of the people in a way that politicians couldn't.
If markets are in fact democracy,